For our Talking Tech show, I recently interviewed the founder, Stefano Marrone of Nucco Brain, a dynamic company that, using latest digital technology, helps brands tell their story more effectively. But what struck me during the interview was the excellent way that Stefano bridged marketing and technology. He didn't arrive at marketing as a result of technology, as so many entrepreneurs do. He truly understands marketing. Nucco Brain is what we call a lighthouse company. With that thought in mind, I wanted to revisit him for the BV TopGun Sales and Marketing Show. So let me introduce you to the founder of Nucco Brain. Welcome, Stefano Marrone.
Thank you so much, Malcolm, for having me again.
Lovely to see you again, yeah. And with such an excellent backdrop of all your awards and the companies you're working with. Stefano, I wanted to ask you to be a guest on the TopGun Sales and Marketing Show because I was so impressed with your approach to solving marketing challenges. But first, please tell everyone what Nucco Brain does and who it does it for.
So we call Nucco Brain a content studio. So our job is to create content, and we operate at the intersection of, on one side, strategy, on the other side, storytelling, and as you were mentioning, technology. So these are the three things that we really combine together. Our job is to create digital marketing campaigns and content, whether that's video, interactive, so XR, VR, AR content, and web development, for companies such as Google, Deloitte, JP Morgan, the European Space Agency, and many more. Our job is really to deal with complex stories and complex value propositions and to deliver this through technology in a result-driven way. So we're quite focused on KPI and results as opposed to the sheer creative aspect. Is really the mix of those two things that delivers the value for our clients.
Excellent, yeah. Now, I said in my opening piece that I was impressed in our first interview with the way you bridge marketing and technology. Where do you see a selection of the big current and future challenges for marketers who are looking for results?
That's a fantastically good and not simple question to answer. So I just picked a couple of main things. You know, I think that one to take into account is that the world is in flux nowadays. I mean, I'm not just talking about the COVID aspect, but also, you know, the implications. We don't know when we're going to necessarily go back into the space of being able, or if we will ever go back to the space of being able to live life as we used to. So a big part of marketing that used to be essential, and it still is what we call experiential. So it's that part of the marketing that deals with you know, in-person experiences and events. Now, if you think about the experiential space, it's very difficult now, you know, like you cannot do big assemblement of people. So I would say that that's the need of a new shape for experiential is one of the biggest trends, you know. And on the other space, it's like, because everybody's moving towards digital content, how do you make that content high quality and to compete on the space where, you know, everything is a scroll away from oblivion, and how do you make sure that whatever you create on a digital environment sticks and is memorable? I think that these two aspects of like, how do we bring what used to be an in-person part of it to the digital space, and how do you stick in that digital space is the biggest challenge that we're looking at. And I would say there is a third aspect connected to it. It's like, how do you measure success in that sense, which is not necessarily an easy answer, but you know, we have a couple of ideas.
Right. Okay. Now let's try and bring that a little bit more to reality for the marketers watching. Let's deep dive into one of the marketing challenges and tell us how Nucco Brain, you would go about helping that marketer solve that problem.
Yeah, so I'm going to give you an example of some of the work that we're doing now that we're seeing exploding really, and is for a lot of the clients that rely heavily on things like you know, trade shows and fairs, and where they do most of their business, for example, in a specific one. So I'm going to pick up the pharmaceutical tech type of industry just as an example. And you know, they have 2 or 3 big events every year. That is where they make sure that all their potential clients, doctors, and different hospitals and clinics are present physically. And then you know, there is a lot of information that is shared. The doctors have an opportunity to learn, and at the same time, there is the opportunity to showcase what the latest technologies are and how they work. Now, what happens online is that the equivalent of that event online, given that people cannot travel and go there, is a series of online symposium where you just log in and out. And therefore, there's no opportunity for the people that are actually selling the technology to be able to, at the end of the event, just say, wait a minute, let's have a conversation. Let me showcase you how this works. So on the other end, I think it's pretty terrible what some things that we're seeing out there, where you just have a talking head of somebody that is presenting something. But when you're talking about very complex, technologically rich, machinery, how do you present that? A video call is not sufficient anymore for it. So what we're doing now is that we're developing an exclusive set of toolkits for participants to provide a little bit of a unique digital experience. By that, I mean that the problem is you need to reconstruct that element of exclusivity. So what we do is that we sell, we send the clients of our clients, these very specific tech gadgets that basically have codes and unique way to access content, and that creates that sensation of exclusivity for the content that they're accessing. And then what they do is that online on screen they have a live VFX, so a little bit like you have a background that is a virtual background. Imagine that enhanced with animation and movement, and then speakers can also utilize power by browsers or WebGL powered VR and AR content. So the idea is really, how do we take something that is impossible to do anymore in a physical space and enhance the digital experience without forgetting the exclusivity of it? So that's just one example of the type of ways in which we can take what is the biggest revenue generator of a client and make it revive in the digital space.
Fascinating. Almost you feel like those old days of going back to exhibitions and conferences won't change, because you're delivering a 365 24/7 conference, aren't you?
That's exactly it. And with we're also doing that for internal comms, because what big companies cannot do anymore is just to get everybody in one saying, oh, we're going to do a 2-day with all the teams. So at the moment we're working for a number of broadcasters that are like, how do we do a week worth of content without people disengaging? Because the problem is, of course, that if it's not good or interesting enough, it's not like be physically there sitting in a theater. You cannot leave, or it takes a little bit more effort to leave. You can just stop listening, and disengaging. So our job is really to make sure that people are constantly engaged, even in the online space.
Fascinating. Look, let's talk storytelling. In my sales talks and presentations for years, I've used storytelling, and I know how powerful it is. But how is storytelling changing? Why is it that it should now be at the forefront of a marketer's strategic toolkit? What do you think marketers need to know today about storytelling?
I think that's a very good question, because there is this element of buzzwords that, like every industry, marketing is the same. It's like, it seems that storytelling is now a buzzword, or it has been for a while. People are like, oh, are you still here talking about storytelling? And yes, we are, because storytelling doesn't change. Storytelling is what makes us human. We communicate through story, we learn through story, and we experience and expand our vision of the world through story. What I think has changed radically, though, is the context of the story. We used to have a story that was one place, one medium. You go, you see a movie, lights go down, you enjoy it, and you have the undivided attention. What we need to understand now is that while the way of telling a story in terms of the structure and its pieces, you still need characters, you still need a narrative arc, you still need to have challenges and overcoming those challenges. All the geeking out about storytelling that you can find in a script writing manual is now shattered across many different small pieces. So when thinking about a story and turning that story into a marketing campaign, the question is, rather than expressing it in one video, one piece of content, how do we break it down across different pieces so that there is a consistent and unique narrative for people that are enjoying it in a way that is not linear? And it's more difficult than it looks, because what you need to take into account is that people might not see, you produce 15 pieces of content, they might see only 8 of them for any type of reason, and they still have to make sense, and I think that a common mistake is to create campaigns that demand too much from the audience in terms of cognitive load, like you have to follow every single thing that is out there. That is the ideal situation, but very rarely we're lucky enough to have that. So it's really try to understand how a story can live in many different channels, and not ditch the storytelling because it's like, oh, we cannot do a long movie about this. That's not the point. It's really to understand how you can keep the same things that human communication revolves around, and break it around the media landscape, if you want.
I love that way that you're re-engineering or reinventing storytelling, because it's true, it is so powerful. Now, many marketers tell me they are keen to use new technology, but also fearful of it in case it fails and the results damage their company and perhaps their own reputation. With so many changes in elements such as machine learning and artificial intelligence, you can understand their concern. How does Nucco Brain help and reassure such marketers?
I think that's a question that is really poignant nowadays, because you want to take a risk, you want to do something different, but that you want to also be reassured that that's not going to cost you, any reputational damage, or that's not going to cost you your job if you're the brand manager or the CMO of a company. I think that there is an element of talking about story, the difference between what is actually doable and feasible, and what is our narrative about what could be feasible. And that with the Silicon Valley tech dream narrative that is very present on PR media, that's a risky approach in terms of like, oh, we've been told that Magic Leap was a great thing, and then it bombed, and so, oh, what can we actually do? I think that the best thing to do is really think about what is feasible and tested versus what is just being developed now. And there's nothing like being up to date towards what is out there. So I think that a lot of times what we find out is that there's a big part of education from our side on clients about this is what has been tested, is there for sure, and this is what instead we could try and take a look if it works, but it would be a risk. And it's a silly thing to say, but a lot of people that ask us for specific technology haven't tried those technologies. I'm like, if you're going to ask us to do VR, try VR. And we make that available for our clients, but the truth is that they're all quite readily available. If you ask us to do augmented reality, we're going to do a demo with you or send a link to something that we have done, but you have to try it on, And I remember many times when you have this enthusiastic person that 5 minutes before was quite skeptical about it. But I think it's doing your research, so to speak, by trying things that are out there. It's very important, because I think that very many times the problem is the theory. In theory, I'd like a VR experience, and then our question is always like, why? And is there a reason? Otherwise, maybe we should take a look at a different approach. I know that it is not exactly a straight to your question answer, but that aspect of like demystifying technology as something that is incomprehensible. I think people like me, our job is to make it as accessible as possible, and fundamentally distrust people that are telling you that you wouldn't understand. I always say to my clients, I'm very happy to talk to you about all the details of this. And precisely because I say that, they trust me, and I say there's no need, But on the other way, I see a lot of people using it as if it's this esoteric approach to just charge more. And I think that if that's what you do, if as an agency or a technologist, that's your way of making money, then you don't deserve the business. People should stay with you because you're good at what you deliver, not because you're mysterious in the ways you build.
I totally agree with you. I've met many condescending agencies that say, well, you don't need to know, and all that sort of thing. That wrong approach. As I applaud you on Nucco Brain on your caring approach there. Okay, so the marketer is convinced what you do will work, but now needs to convince the doubting chief financial officer and possibly the rest of the technology-averse board. The CFO and the CEO simply want to know usually two things: ROI, return on investment, and risk mitigation. How can Nucco Brain help the marketer make a persuasive pitch to the board?
That's, we meet this type of challenges all the time. And you're right, you need to have a reassurance because ultimately these people are running a business. So the first thing that I would say is we always work with strategists. Even when we do the most kind of simple production of content, and you want to have somebody that is able to do a little bit of research and make the case, and make that case based on as many market research numbers as possible. So we have a number of resources that we access, that we pay for. We're making sure that we can always say, okay, this is what's happening from a market point of view. This is how well this technology has been performing. Otherwise, why trust us? So I would say that aspect, and that's why we call it a strategic content creation. It's important. ROI is a little bit more tricky though, because there are not that many disclosed figures specifically. You can find a lot of media disclosed figure, but not that specific about one piece of content. You can take a look at the whole campaign and see how that performs. But I think that the best thing to do is really, as an approach, take a look at proven past results. B, understand what type of brand you are in terms of risk taking. Meaning, many times we're lucky enough to have very big clients that are willing to take a risk, and they understand that that risk will give them bigger PR coverage. With Unit 9, we did send a cell phone in space to take a selfie with the stars, and it was like a big PR explosion. We did all we could to de-risk it, and in the end, it was a success. But Samsung was very aware of the risk connected to it. On the other hand, there are some brands that are like, that's a little bit too much for me. I'm a risk adverse type of brand, or I'm willing to take this amount of risk. So in that sense, it's good to rely on expertise and proven results from past clients. Not every client can, launch themselves into a crazy risky venture, and we understand that. So I think that either all self-assessment of your relationship with risk is very important. And sometimes it's not the big PR stunt that gets you the result. There's more of the steady content that has a track record. And lastly, for risk mitigation that you were mentioning, I think that for us, we would never start a project that has elements of risk like that without what we call a discovery phase. So discovery phase is us assessing every potential, worst case scenario, taking a look at it and looking also deeply inside the technology requirement and availability in terms of internal tech of our clients, whatever content management system they might have, or whatever IT limitations they might have. And if after that discovery we think that, listen, this is not going to work out for this and this reason, or unless you change this and this in your IT department, then it has happened in the past. The projects ended up being not as ambitious as we thought we could do, or the other way around, and say, oh, you're way above the type of requirements we have, and we're ready to do something even more interesting and groundbreaking. So the discovery phase, I think it's an essential part of our approach.
I really like that discovery. And you did talk about it in our first interview, and I think it's very, very powerful. Stefano, I'm totally convinced that you hold the key to innovative marketing. Let's finish our chat today with you giving our marketing viewers the Nucco Brain 3 elements pitch as to why they should have a conversation with you now.
All right. Well, thanks for the question. So first of all, what I would like to say to the clients out there, organization, is that if you have a complex topic, something that is seemingly too complicated to be engaging, we're definitely the agency for you. Our job is to take tough cookie topics and make it very, very interesting. It doesn't matter if it is explaining nuclear reaction in VR, or new taxation law. We're the type of people that really get a kick out of that aspect of engaging with complexity. Also, we have, second thing, 25 years plus in technology delivery, and that's thanks to our group expertise, Unit 9, which means that we have plenty of track record in the creation of technology. And as a third aspect, which I think is the most important one, is that we don't produce content for pretty sake, just to do something that we are satisfied with, or just to win awards. The thing that we put first and foremost is the client objective. Whatever KPI, whatever success looks like from a client point of view, we want to do that first. And then if an award comes out of it, good. But the award is not the reason to do the creative content. First, it's the result for the client.
Brilliant. Stefano Marrone, you will definitely have created a lighthouse company. Thank you for being on the Top Gun Sales and Marketing Show.
Thank you so much for having me, Malcolm.